are Heather and Paul Christie.
And for over 12 years, we've worked with executives and entrepreneurs to accelerate change in every aspect of their business.
Because we are in the fastest paced business environment that anyone has ever seen before.
So join us for the Evolve to Win show. Hey, and welcome to another Evolve to Win show with Heather and Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Heather.
Hi, Keith.
Hey, Keith.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
We have Keith Harmeyer as our guest on the show today, and I'm so thrilled to have Keith. We know him as the idea guy. Keith is our innovation expert. We've known him for a number of years through the National Speakers Association. And I just want to share a little bit about why you want to listen to Keith, and then we'll talk a little bit about his background as well. But if you are in a situation where you'd like to have increased collaboration, higher efficiency, if you'd like to have increased and improved contribution from your team members, and if that's not enough, if you would like to know the strategies to cut your meeting time by 50%, then you do not want to miss this guest. So I am so thrilled to have Keith on the show with us today. For more than 20 years, Keith Harmeyer was a creative director and a writer for New York City advertising agencies. So that's not easy to do. That's a super, super impressive role that you used to have. And you worked with some of the top global brands. Like you worked with Google, with Under Armour, NBCUniversal, right?
Yeah.
And prior to, this is what I think is one of the fun things about Keith. Prior to his career in, creative writing and advertising, he was an actor and an opera singer. And Paul and I both have been fortunate enough to hear him belt out a tune or two. And, I haven't told you this, Keith, but at some point we might ask you to break into song during this podcast if you'd be willing.
Oh boy, okay.
Okay, pressure's on. So Keith is a founding partner at SmartStorming, and he's co-author of the book SmartStorming, which, by the way, we just got into. And not only is it incredibly practical and awesome information, you guys really, really good writing, very well organized. I love the book. He graduated from Loyola in Tulane because, of course, he is a Nolans. Did I say that right?
Pretty close. Close enough, yeah. It would be better after a couple of drinks, but that's
I'd do better with a couple of beignets and a couple of hurricanes, right? But he is from Louisiana. And he is a professional member of the National Speakers Association, which is how we've been able to connect. And my most favorite thing about you in this whole world, Keith, is that you are the incoming president next year. So he's serving as our president-elect on our board of directors, and I currently am serving as president. So I have just an amazing successor coming into office and just going to continue to take that association to completely new heights. So,
and I'm still not sure how you talked me into that, Heather, but
too late to back out now. You're live, you're recorded, and it's going out to millions of people everywhere. So happy to have you here with us, Keith. Let's just start off with what is it that got you into this profession, into your business in SmartStorming?
Well, it's interesting. As I was sitting here listening to you talk about my background and my bio, even to me, it sounds kind of random, right? It's he was a singer, he was an opera singer, he worked in advertising, but it really does all sort of fit together pretty nicely. I also, was listening and thinking, well, what does innovation have to do with cutting meeting time by 50% and increasing collaboration? But it actually does. So
I know we can't wait to learn that part.
So I will explain. So it really starts when I was a very young child. And as crazy as that sounds, I was a kid with a very, very vivid and active imagination. And I know all kids, pretty much do have that. But I really did. I spent a lot of time alone when I was a kid. I only have one sibling, my big brother, Greg. He's almost 10 years older than I am. And in fact, today is his birthday. So happy birthday, Greg.
Happy birthday, Greg.
But Greg's almost 10 years older than I am, so clearly he didn't spend too much time with me when I was a kid.
He didn't play with you.
Not too much. When he did, he would pretty much torture me. So sorry, Greg. But you can tell by the age difference, I was somewhat of a surprise to my parents, and came along at a time when they didn't expect to have another young child. And of course, this was before the internet. It was before video games. It was before DVDs. It was even before VCRs. We had 3 stations on TV. So I spent a lot of time all by myself with nothing to occupy myself except my imagination and my ideas. And so I really exercised that a lot. I used to play pretend and dress up as different characters and make things out of junk around the house that I could play with. It just really sort of defined who I was. And as a result of all that, I think as I got older, I just naturally gravitated to creative pursuits. And that's why I pursued a career on the stage. And as you said, I was a professional singer and actor. All of my formal education is in music. That took me to New York City, where I was pursuing, a theatrical career. And somehow I found myself working in advertising. When the time came to get kind of a real job, it's not really a real job, but I got a job at an advertising agency. And I really felt like for the first time in my life, I was doing what I was always intended to do. And that was coming up with ideas to solve problems. And that was my job. I worked on the creative side of the business. And for over 20 years, every single day, I was tasked with coming up with fresh, new creative ideas to solve business problems for my clients. And they were obviously advertising and marketing problems, but also product and service related problems and customer and employee engagement problems, all sorts of things. And, after all those years of experience, I was actually pretty good at it, which is fortunate. Otherwise, I'd still be a starving artist in New York City. But
so were you like Mad Men?
It was exactly like Mad Men. Obviously, it wasn't that long ago. I'm not quite that old. It wasn't in the 60s, but but what was depicted on that show was exactly what it was. When you work as a creative professional, you don't have the luxury of waiting for inspiration or waiting for the muse to arrive. Every single day, you have to generate creative ideas on demand. And so, like most people, I developed a process and applied it because that was my job. But then who knew that not so long after that this skill that I developed, this ability to generate ideas to creative problem solving, which is really what it is, would become such a critical skill in the world. And so it really became my pursuit, not only to be able to do it, to be able to teach other people and support organizations and teams and individuals in how to do that. And that's how I ended up with my company, with SmartStorming, and doing the work that I do.
Hey, and can we go back and I think and I just learned this not too long ago, but I want to get your opinion on it. Creative. People either think they're creative or they don't think they're creative, right? Yep. You ask a lot of people, say, oh, I don't have that creative thing. And what I really recognize, at least in myself, is that I used to say that I wasn't a creative person. But I watched a video on something, maybe it was Earl Nightingale, I think it might have been. And he was talking about, taking time in the morning and sitting down with your cup of coffee and really going through and solving problems. So if you're a problem solver, you're being creative just in the sense of just being able to solve a problem. And I think most people underestimate their ability to be creative. It's not that they're not creative. It's that they haven't set the time aside or just initiated that, like, in themselves, that they are a creative person. Every single person on this earth, it has a creative piece of mind in them. Mm-hmm. And so what do you think about that?
Well, absolutely, Paul. You're 100% correct in both aspects of that. So first of all, and research supports it, by the way. So Adobe actually conducted a survey called I forgot what it was all, but it was about this very topic, about how people view themselves. And I believe the number is about 7 out of 10 people do not identify themselves as creative.
Oh, really?
Now, pretty remarkable, right? Now, we, and in our own work at SmartStorming, my partner and I have experienced the same thing. We ask this question all the time. We've asked thousands of people, and I would say that that's probably around the right percentage. 70% consider themselves either uncreative or just kind of creative. Very, very few people will identify as being highly creative. This is one of my favorite subjects because and as somebody who has an artistic background, I really understand this. See, where we get hung up on this is that we confuse creative thinking ability with artistic talent. So we think that because we can't draw a stick figure or we can't write a simple poem or we have no real artistic ability, that we're not creative. But creative thinking ability and artistic ability are two completely different things. You don't have to have any artistic ability to solve problems creatively. And in fact, we all solve problems creatively every single day. If you go into your closet and try to decide which outfit to put together, using what's there, that's creative problem solving. If you've ever been out driving and there's bad traffic and you have to figure out an alternate route home, that's creative problem solving, because you're coming up with an idea that you didn't have previously. We all do it all the time. So the only difference between highly creative thinkers, if you will, is that they do it. They have the confidence, they recognize that they can, and they practice it. So
and how important is that practice?
Well, it's very important. So I have a colleague, actually, a guy in the UK, and he actually developed an assessment that we use in our business, a diagnostic tool to help assess people's natural creative problem-solving strengths and weaknesses. And he explained it to me like this recently. I thought it was a great metaphor, that creativity and creative thinking is a little bit like learning to drive a car, right? So most of us who are adults can drive a car. So when you learn to drive a car, there's a certain amount of sort of theory and concepts that you have to know, right? You have to know a little bit about the car. You have to know where to sit and what pedals to push and all that sort of thing. And then there's a certain skill set that you have to have. Not a lot, but you have to know exactly how to push the pedal down and how to steer and how to apply the brake. So a little bit of knowledge about cars, a little bit of skills, but then what you really need is practice. You actually have to do it. You have to get behind the wheel and get out there and drive. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. It becomes second nature, and we develop confidence. And creative thinking is very much the same way. So the people that you think of, that you know in your life or in your business that are the creative types, right? Those are just the people that do it. They recognize that they can, and they develop the confidence and the skills to do it. But everybody can do it. Everybody can learn to do it. It's really not that complicated. And as long as you apply it and practice it, you get better and better.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right, because well, first of all, it's the self-talk. So if you think that you're not creative, then you're not going to try. Mm-hmm. If you've confused what being a creative person is, from either playing musical instruments or drawing or writing, if you think those are just the only ways that you can be creative. And I know, even just for myself, I never thought I was a creative person. And when I realized that it's all, for me, being creative, just creative thinking around problem solving, I love to problem solve. It's cool. And also, the other confusion is in problem solving, you would put it maybe with math or being a mathematician, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Problem solving, being a Goodwill Hunting or something. But, this being just everyday problem solving issues that come up, whether it's in business or your personal life or in relationships, whatever it is, you can use that part of your brain. And if you activate it, it can become extremely helpful. And like you said, build more confidence in doing it and really start to break down that wall of creativity. It becomes a lot easier as well.
Absolutely. In fact, in our work, we sometimes try to avoid using the word because people really do get hung up mm-hmm. With it. So we talk about creative problem solving. I will often refer to it as innovative problem solving, just to get the creative word out of the conversation, so that people don't stumble on that. But you're absolutely right, Paul. And by the way, I know you and I've seen you in action, and you're a great problem solver. You come up with solutions to accomplish things all the time, and that's creative thinking. Anytime you come, and by the way, you talk about math. I mean, Albert Einstein was a mathematician. He was also probably one of the greatest creative problem solvers in history. The math is used to prove or support the idea, but you have to have the idea to begin with, right? That's really what you're trying to do.
Yeah. So Keith, in your book, you start off by talking about the fact that innovation is the new Darwinism. And I'd really like you to just expand on that concept just a little bit, because I think it's so much in line with the purpose and the premise for this show, which is helping entrepreneurs and executives evolve to win, right? Because our world is changing so quickly. If you're not growing, you're dying. Talk to us about how innovation fits into all of that.
Well, what you just referred to is really innovation. So let me begin, because this is an important conversation, and it's really at the core of what my work is. The first thing is a lot of people don't truly understand what innovation is. So we think that innovation, we only think of innovation in terms of disruptive innovation or revolutionary innovation, the things that are introduced that are unlike anything we've ever seen before. But that's really not certainly that's innovation, but that's not all it is. So in our work, everybody's got a different definition of innovation. So in our work, when we do a workshop or I deliver a keynote, I always share our definition because it's very simple and practical. So we define innovation as the introduction of something new or different that provides greater value or benefit. Okay, so it's got to be new or different from what currently exists, but it's also got to provide some degree of greater value or benefit to someone. Now, when you think about innovation in those terms, it's not so mysterious and out of reach, right? Really, all we're saying is finding something that could be improved and making it better. Okay. And that really is what innovation is. Now, this demand for innovation, the Darwinism, as you referred to it, we have a term that we use, the innovation imperative, and it's just fairly evident that in today's world, if you aren't continuously changing, if you're not continuously evolving and improving and delivering increasingly greater value and benefit to your clients, to your customers, to your own organization, if you aren't doing that, somebody else is going to do it. Just a matter of time. And you will very quickly become irrelevant. And we see it, we read about companies all the time, companies that were once at the top of the game, at the top of their industries, and they're going under. Why? Because they failed to remain relevant to their customers. And so, just like we expect our smartphone to get better and better and better, and our cars to get better and better, and our televisions and our watches and whatever it is that impact our lives to get continuously better, our clients, our customers, our organizations are expecting the same thing. They want better and better and better. And so as a result, every one of us today has to be a little bit like Steve Jobs, right? We all have to be continuously looking for ways to deliver greater value and benefit on an ongoing basis. So that's why innovation has become so critical, even to the individual, not just to the organization.
That's interesting. Heather and I, a few years ago, I kind of got this little itch that I wanted to be an inventor. I wanted to invent something. I'm like, hey, we can all invent it. So this is when I was really starting to tap into my creative mind. So I was like, hey, if I have this, well, why don't I use it? Why don't I create something? Why don't I invent something? It can be done. And especially with Shark Tank now, everybody's come up, it's kind of become kind of normal for people to consider thinking of something else. But, the interesting thing happened is when we went to that inventors meeting, and it was cool because it was at the Edison estate. So the Edison estate is down here in Southwest Florida.
I've visited there before. It's awesome.
Yeah. And it's really cool. So you're kind of where it all, a lot of this started.
Yeah. We were sitting in Edison's workshop as we were having this inventors meeting. It was way cool.
Yeah. And one of the interesting things as we learned from some of the inventors in there, and there were some pretty, big people that had invented a lot of cool stuff. But what they said is, the easiest thing to do is not come up with a brand new idea. It's to take an existing idea and make it better.
Right.
Yeah.
And
do better, or combine a couple.
Yeah, there's a lot more work that goes into coming up with these brand new ideas. But if you can just take a simple idea and just make it a little bit better, it can pay off. So yes, all of the little innovations that are happening right now. I mean, we do it all in our own businesses, right? Or in our own business, we're always looking to how do you improve it? How do you stay in front of it? The problem is that a lot of times you don't know if you're innovating fast enough. Is somebody coming up with an idea that's just going to take your idea and make it obsolete?
Absolutely. So I just a couple of comments on that. So the type of innovation you're referring to, we refer to that as incremental innovation, and that's the most common type of innovation. The other thing I want to say about this, by the way, we also tend to collapse innovation and technology. Innovation certainly does not have to involve technology at all. Mm-hmm. So, the first fast food restaurant that did a drive-through window, that was innovation because they delivered greater value or benefit to their customers in a way that nobody else had been doing. And it didn't involve technology at all, but it was an improvement. The second level of innovation we call evolutionary. So that's when you take something and fundamentally change it. It's still performing the same function, but you make it completely different. So you think about the Dyson fan or the Dyson vacuum cleaner. You know, Dyson's a great one for that. Richard Dyson, James Dyson, sorry. He will fundamentally transform things. And then, of course, there's revolutionary or disruptive innovation, which is something that we've just never seen before. But you're right; those are few and far between, and they usually take quite a bit of time and iteration and to happen. They don't happen overnight, certainly. So all of those, everything you're saying there is just spot on. That's innovation can take all different forms. In fact, when we worked at Under Armour, super innovative company, by the way, that was a very important thing that they wanted their people to understand, because at Under Armour, everybody's trying to come up with the new thing. Mm-hmm. And in order for them to survive, they can't just do that, right? They have to also incrementally improve the things that they're bringing to market. So it's a very important aspect.
So what I really like that you have, at least for me, reframed my thinking already in a short period of time about what creative means, you know, creative versus artistic. And that when I think about innovation, I'm always thinking, I think about revolutionary, something brand new that doesn't exist. And especially as speakers and trainers, you know, thought leaders, we're constantly looking for that new idea that's really going to revolutionize the leadership space. And the reality is that is, I don't know, is it the most difficult type of innovating to do? Is this revolutionary innovating?
Absolutely. I mean, and look, sometimes people are lucky they stumble onto things, right? So that's great. But typically that's not the way it works. You know, as I said, the process to come up with a truly revolutionary, think about something like the microchip. Somebody didn't just wake up one morning and stamp out a microchip and then we had computers. It took years of development and testing and refinement to do that. You know the famous story about Thomas Edison. So that with the light bulb, you know, that it's either 1,000, 5,000, or 10,000, depending on whose version of the story you listen to.
But it's thousands anyway, right?
Right. But thousands of elements he tried to develop the filament and failed, right? So it took him endless time to come up with tungsten as the best filament for the incandescent light bulb. It didn't happen overnight. So but by the way, it's very common. Most of us, I think of innovation in those terms. We've just gotten used to that. Mm-hmm. But innovation,
it's so much bigger. It's so much. It's and maybe so much easier. What I'm getting is that, you know, instead of worrying about coming up with this brand new thought that no one's ever thought before, I love the concept. And even in our brief stint in focusing on inventions, I love the concept of taking something that's good or even great and making it better. And I want us all to be thinking about this in our business. What if we just looked at the top 2 or 3 areas of our businesses and said, okay, what are 3 areas we want to focus on? What's 1 or 2 things that could make our delivery of this service better? Like, how valuable would that be if you just got intentional about looking at areas of your business and say, what is 1 or 2 things we could do to make the client experience better? Is that innovating?
Absolutely. And it's interesting you bring that up, because exactly what you're describing is a concept that we use in our business. We call it everyday innovating, right? So it's okay. And we always make the point, innovation, by the way, is not an event, right? It's not something that you do once a year or once a season or once a month. It's a mindset that you bring to the table every single day. We make the point sometime. I believe that the most successful companies today are the ones that focus on innovation all the time. So I would say, Amazon is not an online retailer that happens to be innovative. They're an innovation-focused company that happens to play in the online retail state. Innovation is at the core of their DNA. The same thing with Apple. Apple is not a technology company that happens to be innovative. They're an innovation company that plays in the technology space. So if we all approach our businesses in that way, every day innovating, right, we will achieve the same kind of success relative to our businesses and our industries. So exactly what you say, we teach people, recommend to people that they go, this is what you do every day when you show up at work. Look for things that can be made better. All the time. Be on the lookout for things that can be improved, and then come up with ideas to improve them.
I think you gave us 2 tweetables just now, at least, maybe more, but everyday innovating. I love that phrase, is just having that as a mindset. And also, innovating is not an event, it's a mindset.
Exactly.
How much of this is just about awareness, about being intentional and having that focus on what can be better? It's the Kaizen principle, right?
Yes.
Constant, never-ending improvement.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, it also is setting your RAS, the reticular activating system, for, in your brain, looking for opportunities to innovate at any opportunity. So when you have, because it's a fine line, I think, too, Keith, and I'm sure you teach this, is that to be innovating all the time can be distracting as well, because there are certain things that need to be done consistently all the time. So do you teach setting separate time throughout the day to be able to do the creative minds work, or do you somehow be able to blend it all together to work throughout the day with it?
Well, we don't exactly teach that you set aside time, but we do sort of encourage and teach and coach people to make that part of their routine, so that at least for some part of every day you think, how are things going? Are there any areas of friction? Are there any areas of frustration? Are there things that I believe I could do to improve? Obviously, you have to continue to conduct business, right? But to make that part of your day. In fact, one of the things we encourage people to do is come up with an idea every day, one idea. You don't even have to implement all of them, but make it a practice to come up with an idea every single day. By the end of the year, if you do that every workday, by the end of the year, you'll have 200 ideas. Do you think some of those might be ideas that could improve your business or deliver greater value to your clients or your customers or your organization? Probably so.
And can you imagine if everybody in the organization came up with one idea per day? How about?
And that's why I'm in business.
That's right. I totally get it.
I think another way of identifying areas for innovation is as easy as looking at just frustrations. So you have complaints, easy to find complaints throughout organizations. What's your biggest complaint? And if it has to do with something that's in the system of the company, whatever it is, operational system, whatever, that can be innovated on. That can be made better. Now, if it's a people issue, maybe that's separate. But anything that has to do with that you could actually improve the system or the way that it's being done is an innovation. And so looking for frustrations is a good way, I would imagine, as well.
It's probably the best first place to start, right? So looking for those areas of frustration or friction or challenge. Now, obviously, and by the way, all innovation, the first thing that happens in the innovation process is a challenge. So innovation starts with a problem. We always say the first recipe, the first ingredient in the innovation recipe is an idea. But the idea is always, the catalyst for the idea is a problem. So you have a problem or a challenge or an opportunity. So you have to find that thing. But yes, what you're saying is exactly right. That's a great place to start. The other thing I just want to add here, because I don't want to step over it, is that we should also remember to look, not just, we also tend to think of innovation in terms of the thing we sell, right? The product or the service that we actually put out there in the marketplace, and how do we improve that? But every aspect of your business is fair game for innovation, because it's not just what we do that delivers value to others, it's how we do it. So to your point, Paul, every aspect of your business, the way you operate, your approach to customer relations or employee relations, your systems and processes, all of those things can be innovated if the end result will deliver greater value.
Well, so this was probably the biggest question that our listeners would want to have answered is, and one of the biggest complaints in business is the amount of time that's being spent in meetings.
Oh, I had that as my next question.
How do you reduce time by 50% in meeting times by 50%?
We're taking notes.
So this is very interesting. That's why I said, what does this have to do with innovation? So I will tell you a little bit of just a background about our business. So the way we started in business was my partner was speaking to the president of an advertising agency in New York and talking about creativity and things like that. And this president said, yeah, all that's great. He said, but what I really need is for somebody to teach my people how to brainstorm. Because we are really bad at it. And we're in the creativity business. Our clients are demanding more and more innovative ideas. They want them more frequently. They want them to be better and more breakthrough. And we're getting crushed by this pressure. So we need somebody to teach us an approach. So my partner and I started on this journey of trying to figure out how to foolproof the brainstorming process. And by the way, when we talk about brainstorming, anytime two or more people get together to generate or develop ideas, okay? And so that's what SmartStorming really was in the beginning, was our group problem-solving process that we put together. And we went back to the very beginnings of people doing this back in the 1930s. There was a guy named Alex Osborne, who's considered the father of brainstorming. We researched all the best practices, what had been done. And what we found was that we couldn't find anyone that had put together a truly comprehensive system and process for group brainstorming. And so we did. We sort of deconstructed the whole thing and put it back together the way we would have done it at the start. So.
And this is your SmartStorming process?
That is correct. That's the smart. That was the beginning. Of course, the business has expanded to all sorts of other things now, but we still teach that same program to teach team leaders how to inspire and guide their groups and plan and execute highly effective brainstorms. The side benefit of that, however, was that our clients started coming to us and saying, what you teach is fantastic and it's great for brainstorming, but it applies to all of our meetings. Because really, in the end, if you think about it, the vast majority of business meetings, other than just meetings for briefings or where you're getting briefed or something, are there to solve problems. So whether you call it a brainstorm and think of it as that, usually there's some sort of issue or problem that needs to be worked out. So the side benefit of our brainstorming process is that it became a very effective meeting process. And so following the system that we provide, which begins with pre-planning the meeting, taking at least a few minutes to think through exactly what's going to happen in that room, and it ends with next steps and follow through. So we have depending on which way we're looking at it, either a 6 or a 7-step process. People find that they get highly, highly, highly effective and efficient meetings. And so they are able to accomplish more in less time and with fewer meetings. And that's why we can make that claim that you can cut meeting time and frequency by as much as 50% if you use the best practices that we develop. So in a sense, innovation, creative problem solving, idea generation led to this concept of better collaboration, improved and enhanced contribution from team members, because the things that we teach team leaders to do to support their teams result in all of those benefits. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So your process that you created for SmartStorming actually translates into the same kind of process for having an effective meeting. And I can't tell you how many times we're called in to help people with meeting facilitation, because it is such a major issue for them. I have executives right now during coaching sessions who say to me, they have so many meetings back to back that they don't have time to even reset between meetings and think about what they need to accomplish in the next meeting. So they're still on the last meeting in the current meeting. Forget about the future meeting, which is right on the horizon. So you have, starting with pre-planning, give us some of the steps that you have your clients go through to have those effective meetings?
Sure, absolutely. So, and I will tell you that we actually, as a result of this and this demand and this request by clients, we developed another program. So we have our SmartStorming brainstorm leadership program, and then we developed a Smart Meetings, right, which was a little bit more generic, so that once again we don't get hung up with the idea that we're trying to come up with creative ideas or all the time. Mm-hmm. But some of the steps. So pre-planning is really critical. It's the most important thing that you can do. And by the way, in our processes, we provide people with planners, that are checklists.
You get templates, yeah.
All the things you need to do, but you need to be clear, as you do with any kind of project, what you want to accomplish in that room. Mm-hmm. What do you want to what's going to define success? What do you want to walk out? Who are the important people that need to be in that meeting, and who aren't? Because a lot of times we just haphazardly send out an invitation to the entire team. Half of those people don't have to be there. How many times have you been in a meeting when somebody said, oh, next time we meet on this, we should get Sally in here. She'd be good. Sally should have been in there the first time. And if somebody had thought it through, they would have done that. And half the people in the room may not have to be there at all. So which is
so frustrating, because even though they're there, they're not really there. So they're creating a mixed energy, right? Where they're either working on something else during the meeting or just checking out because they're so frustrated that they shouldn't be in that meeting. I mean, it really causes major disruption, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it wastes their time. This is why people are at the office till 8 o'clock. And this meetings dysfunction issue is universal. We encounter it across all industries, and it's really pretty remarkable. There are statistics out there. I can't pull them out of my head, but I do a presentation about this sometime, about the amount of wasted productivity and money. I mean, it's a drain on the bottom line.
And I would imagine that if managers calling these meetings just followed your step one alone, we don't even know yet what the rest of the steps are, but we know that step one is missed or not maybe intentional or thorough enough in most situations, just from the feedback we're getting from our clients.
Absolutely.
It's all over the place.
In our work, we say if there's one step in our process that we absolutely encourage you to do, it's planning. Yeah. If you don't, that alone can save you enormous time and effort and energy. And of course, it's a little bit of a trick, because of course, if you plan, then that's probably going to have an impact on a lot of the other things that you would have to do. Mm-hmm. But it's the single most important step. And then after planning, it's really about the things that happen in the room. So planning happens before, everything else happens in the room. How to effectively open. So you want to share your objectives and your goals with the group right at the top. You want to get people aligned. By the way, things like icebreakers, and that's one of those words that make people cringe. But we're big believers in icebreakers, and a lot of our clients are as well. And an icebreaker can mean all kinds of different things. It doesn't have to mean going around the room and sharing, your favorite, your dream vacation or something like that.
If you were a superhero, what superhero?
Right. If you were a superhero, what would your superpower be? We love that one, by the way. But it really is only about very quickly getting the group aligned and focused on the task at hand. So once again, how many times have you been in a meeting that took 20 minutes to really get started? Because people aren't focused, they're on their phones, they're doing so.
And I would add one thing about the icebreaker. I am a huge fan of icebreakers, because I also think what it does is it pulls people into the present.
Exactly.
When you give them a question that requires conscious level thinking, that brings them into the present moment. And how many people, as I said before, are in the last meeting and they're not in the current meeting? So I love that icebreaker.
Years ago, we used to go into you guys might be old enough to remember this. We used to go into a conference room and close the door, and that was it. The outside world was gone.
Yeah.
Until we opened the door again. That's not the case anymore. So we are very distracted. Everybody in the room is distracted. And we always tell our clients, everything we do is designed to save time and make things run more efficiently. Everything. So if you are a team leader, if you're the facilitator in that room and you want to get as much done in the time you have allotted, you want to get people focused as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. And an icebreaker, whatever form that takes, is the way to do that. Stating the goals and objectives for the meeting in a clear way, and actually, in some cases, if it's an idea generation meeting, how you actually, this is a huge topic, how you actually verbalize your goal and objective can be very, very critical. So we, in our programs, we have an exercise where we have people write and rewrite the challenge. What are we actually trying to solve here? Because the way it's stated, once again, can have a profound impact on how quickly people get up to speed and are generating solutions.
So I want to stop you for just one second there, because I think that's brilliant, and I've never really thought about taking that into the meeting setting. There was a book written by Dale Carnegie, not the popular one that everyone's read, but it's called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you've read that one, but one of the key concepts that he talks about is that the reason that people worry is because there's a problem or there's a challenge out there. But that the real genesis of the worry is the fact that they haven't truly identified the problem. Most people won't take those extra steps to say, okay, so what is the actual problem? So what you're asking people to do is to clarify and re-clarify and get really, really specific on what is the problem, challenge, or opportunity that you need to convey. Because the first time you try to convey that and communicate that is not always going to come across the best way.
Absolutely correct, and that's a key part of this process. So, and we teach some techniques around that. We teach the 5 whys technique, which was developed at Toyota, where you dig deeper and deeper and deeper to try to figure out what the essence of the problem or challenge or opportunity is. Because once again, how many times have you been in a meeting where you get towards the end of the meeting and you realize you've been working on the wrong problem? Mm-hmm. So often we focus on symptoms of a challenge rather than the challenge itself.
Oh my gosh.
So that's and there's an Einstein quote. I wish I could remember it exactly, but he says something about, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend the first 59 minutes thinking about it, and then 1 minute actually solving it. So so that's a critical part of the process, is really making sure you're identifying the specific problem you need to solve, and then again phrasing it or expressing it in a way that is clear and concise and actually gets people's imaginations going.
Yeah, it even comes back to, I like to ask people this question too, especially if they're worrying about, in more of their personal life, is what's the worst case scenario?
Yes.
Because most people don't think about what is the worst case scenario when they're starting a new business, or if they're going to start, and change their business model up or whatever it is. What if I do this? And they worry so much about that, but they don't ever really think about, well, if, what is the worst case scenario? And it's never as bad as you think it is. And, or maybe it is, and you think about it and you say, well, maybe that's just the reason why I'm not going to do it. But I think for whatever reason, we as human beings avoid thinking what the worst case scenario is or what is the real problem, because it's just easier to go to more with the surface level.
Yeah. And I think we just don't take the time to do it.
Right.
We react to our emotional state rather than thinking it through and really trying to clarify. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think just this whole concept of getting into your conscious thought, into your creative genius, I truly believe, and I think Earl Nightingale was one. I also think Napoleon Hill talks about this in a couple of his books too, is that we're all born with this creative genius inside of us.
Sure.
We all have it. It's just how often are you tapping into it, accessing it, practicing? Are you intentionally focusing on creating one new idea per day?
Yeah.
So, all right. So Keith, you gave us the first 2 for smart meetings. First is pre-planning. Second is open. Give us just one more before we wrap up for today. I mean, I think those first 2 are probably alone going to shave a lot of time off of meetings, but give us one more.
Yeah. I want to share this, even though it's really specifically about idea generation, problem solving meetings. So not just your typical business briefing or whatever, which can also be made to run more efficiently, but the idea evaluation and selection process is a process within itself. And that's a big deal, because it can be at least as dysfunctional as all the rest of it, and take time and be frustrating and cause all sorts of issues. So
you called that the idea evaluation and selection process?
Yeah. So if you're trying to come up with solutions for a problem or ideas for taking advantage of an opportunity, at some point you're going to have to decide what idea you're going to run with, right?
Okay.
What's the best idea? And that process is one that's a sort of a sub process, right? But it can be really dysfunctional and challenging, because what typically happens is there's a discussion, there's a battle of egos. Sometimes the most senior person in the room just makes the decision, and there's not real clarity on the fact that the idea that's been selected is really one that's valid or the best one. So, and very often it's not. So we teach a process for that as well, how to bring a certain degree of objectivity to the idea selection process. That's very important, and it, it's a little bit involved, so probably too deep to get into. But part of the planning process, I'll just tell you, is identifying what criteria a good solution will have before you start generating ideas. What is a good idea going to look like? What will it accomplish? And maybe 5 or 6 different criteria. It may be, depending on what you're working on, but maybe it would be innovative. It would be relevant to our customer. It would say, it would be executable. We could actually afford to do it with the time and resources that we have. And so later on, once you have a selection of ideas to go through, you can literally go through and compare, does it accomplish each one of these things? And if it doesn't, where is it weak and where can we strengthen it? And it just brings a certain level of objectivity to the whole process. So that's really extremely important. And I will say quickly, the last step is establishing next steps and follow through before you leave the room. And the most important part of that sentence is before you leave the room. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't, the odds that it's going to happen or happen quickly or efficiently immediately begin to diminish the minute people walk out. So we strongly encourage people to at least establish what the next steps are before they leave.
Awesome.
Got it.
I don't know how many of our listeners out there are thinking to themselves right now, oh my God, my meetings suck, because I'm not pre-planning the way I should be. I'm not framing the problem, challenge, or opportunity in a way that is as productive as it could be. I don't even have a process for idea evaluation and selection. Like that's a mind opener for me too. Establishing criteria for what's a good idea. Oh my God, it truly is like a decision-making process. What's the model that we're going to use to make this decision? So we wonder why it's so hard to make some of these decisions. Well, we're not setting ourselves up for success if we don't have some of these elements that you're talking about. So this stuff is just, it's really incredible. And
exactly. And I will just say this for everybody out there who might be thinking, I don't have enough time as it is, and now you're asking me to plan. And I'll say again, everything we do in our work is designed to save time and energy. And it does, but you have to do it. So you have to put in a little bit of extra time up front to save a whole bunch of time on the back end. And it really does work. I mean, we know this from, literally thousands of people that we've trained. And I will say, while the book is specifically about brainstorming, all of these things we've talked about are covered in our book, and it's a very comprehensive deep dive into this stuff. It's not a typical business book. It's instructional, but it's also a reference. Mm-hmm. We have all kinds of techniques and checklists and cheat sheets and planners and things of that nature. So if people are interested in this, obviously, the book is a good place to look. And
where did they get that book, Keith? Where can they find SmartStorming?
Every online book retailer. So it's at Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all of that. And it's available in paper and also digitally for Kindle and all those things. So,
and if they want to get a hold of you, how would they?
How do they find you?
It looks like this.
That's look. So you have the video that you're watching right now. You just saw a picture of the book.
And why did you come up with the idea of an upside down umbrella? And does it have light bulbs in it? Is that what?
Well, my business partner is
that's what's on the front of the book, by the way.
It is, yes. It's an upside down umbrella that is filled with light bulbs that are falling from the sky. So my business partner is a designer who went to the Rhode Island School of Design, which is one of the best design schools in the United States. So that was his concept. I have to give him full credit. His name is Mitchell Ridgey, and he's a very talented guy. So, but yeah, light bulbs have been, for obvious reasons, light bulbs are sort of core to our brand and have always been a big part. And
so Keith,
how they can get in touch?
How do people find you?
Well, SmartStorming.com, and it's just like it sounds. It's like brainstorming except smart. So SmartStorming.com. I also have my speaker website, which is KeithHarmeyer.com for people that are interested in in a keynote speaker, but SmartStorming is the business site, and people can contact us through that.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today and sharing some really, really incredible insights. And I know I've taken a lot of notes. I feel like I've got some really great ideas for things that you and I can do in our business, Paul. And I know that our listeners will get the same. And I was just wondering, Keith, if there were a line of a song that would be like the perfect way to close out this podcast, can you think of what you might sing?
Let's see. I wish you had asked me this before, but I sang something just the other day about combining singing with innovation. So let's see. Yes, I'm singing. I said I wouldn't, but in fairness, Heather didn't say I couldn't. Mixing opera and innovation. Come on, admit that's an innovative combination. There you go.
Oh my gosh. Bravo. Bravissimo. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in to this episode of Evolve to Win, produced in partnership with Gulf Shore Big Business Magazine. And you have been listening to Keith Harmeyer, co-founder of SmartStorming. Feel free to reach out to him, Keith. It's been such a pleasure.
And thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Have an awesome day.
You too.